Hi, I'm Sharon Chinn, and today I'm going to take you through a video showing you how to paint from a photograph. I've got a photograph of some pink tulips that I took in my mom's front yard, and in Photoshop I combined 2 or 3 photos just to get a pleasing composition. So I've printed that out to size, and I've laid a piece of tracing paper over top, and I'm just transferring the main pattern lines using a black felt pen. We're going to put this on an 8x10 canvas, and the first thing I want to do is give the canvas an overall color that kind of complements the pink tulips. So I'm using a vivid violet. It's a DecoArt Americana color, and just slapping a loose coat of that over the canvas. I've transferred the pattern lines with some gray graphite, and using a large round brush, I'm going to start out by filling in some of the tulip, sort of the darkest values, the shadow areas, using Cinnamon Drop, which is a DecoArt Americana color. It's a bright red that has kind of a watermelon pink look to it. So I've got water in my brush to keep this paint very loose, and I'm just going to brush it on and scrub it out. And I'm going to do the 3 tulips first. I tend to work from the foreground to the background, and some people don't like to do this. I'd rather paint the background in first. So feel free to do that if you want. You can follow the pattern and do the steps to do the background and paint your tulips over top of that if you would like. But through the video, I'm going to work the tulips first, then put in the background behind them. I have my reference photo just to the left of the camera. You don't see it, but I'm constantly referring to that to decide where I'm going to put this color to start giving some form to my tulip petals. I'm not going to talk constantly through the video because I think a lot of it's self-explanatory, and you can tell just by watching. I'll just come in every now and then to let you know if I'm using a different color or something that I think needs your attention. You can see I'm just laying the color down, especially where I want the darkest values to start, and just scrubbing and softening that out into that pink undercoat that we put on. Here I'm going to put the reference photo up here, over here closer, so you can kind of follow along with what I'm doing. So we're working on this top tulip to start with. And I'm trying to define the different petals. So here I want to kind of leave that light value along the inner edge of that tulip. And I'm picking up a little bit of the vivid violet that was used in the background. And blending that into the cinnamon drop color. I just added a little cotton candy to my palette. This is a soft light pink, and we're going to use that just as a blending color to put in these softer, lighter areas of the tulip, mostly around the edges, top edges of the petals. And that will help us keep some of these light values. I'm not cleaning my brush out between the colors. I kind of like to work them together so that they kind of blend and give you different values. Here there's an area that's a lot darker on the tulips. I'm putting in some more of that cinnamon drop color to build up that darker value. When I'm going just off camera, you can't quite see it. I've got a little puddle of that vivid violet over there, and that's what I'm mixing with the cinnamon drop to give it a little more of a purplish look. Working on the canvas with, the wet paint, the water in my brush and the wet paints and the canvas texture. These paints will stay wet a little longer so you can kind of smush and blend them together. So you can see I just kind of work in a little pat jiggle motion to soften that paint into the layer that's underneath it. And it also works it into the grain of the canvas so that we fill that in well. This will just be our first layer. We're going to add some more layers over top to define the darks and the highlights. But we just want to get the first general framework in to give some form to the flower. Put out some white and I'm going to see what this looks like when we put our little bright white highlights on the tips of these petals where the sunlight's hitting. I'm just using the tip of the liner brush, and it really pops the color out here. Tulip petals are kind of glossy and shiny, so when the sun hits them, you get these real white, overblown highlights on them. So we'll leave that tulip for now and move on to this lower right one and get some color in it. I'm using, again, the Vivid Violet and some cinnamon drop mixed together. And I've got my reference photo again right next to me, so I can kind of see where these petals are separated and where the dark values are that I want to start laying in to begin with. Since I've never painted this design before, I do spend some time sitting here wavering about where I'm going to go next, so sort of making this up as I go along. So sometimes I'll do things and then I'll decide that's not quite right. I might have to rework it, so you can kind of see the process I go through. You know, as I'm working along through these, I want to make sure I don't lose the definition of each of the petals. I don't want them all get muddied together, so I forget where one ends and one starts. So I try to keep a value change in between the petals, so we keep that flower form as we move along. You can usually see in the picture that, you know, where the petals separate, there's usually a little light line or a darker value behind the petal in front. And that helps us keep these separated. I found, you know, as I was painting this, it's really, really hard to get the vivid pinks that's in this photograph. I never did quite achieve the bright pink that I really see in the picture. So I think sometimes using the Americana paints, they have some fillers and they're I guess, mixes that may have some other colors in them, so they're not quite as clean. They're more toned down colors than what you might get if you were using pure pigment colors. So I found I had to keep reworking, trying to get the brightness that I saw in the photograph. And I never did quite achieve it, but I think I got close. Working from a photograph is pretty interesting because it really makes you more aware of what you see versus what you think you see. You really have to concentrate on the color changes and the value changes. The bottom of these tulip petals have a little white, kind of a little flame or flare that comes up and wraps around the bottom of the petal. So I'm adding some white in here to simulate that. And I say this over and over again as I'm painting in the different videos. Sometimes when you lay a color down, you think it's the right value, and while it's wet, it may be, but you find after the colors dry, they tend to merge together. So you have to sometimes go back and keep repeating. Especially with the whites. We'll have to go back over these whites multiple times before the end of this painting to build up the strength of the value of the whites. We'll move on to the third tulip, and this one has a lot of lavenders in it. So on this left petal, need to wet that paint a little bit more, it's a little too heavy. We're using brilliant purple to start laying in this left petal, because it's got a lot of purple in this one. And I think that is another thing that's pretty about this painting, is that you have a mixture of the cool lavenders and pinks and the warm reds and pinks. And the background's a mix of cool blue greens and warm yellow greens. And those all play off, the cools and warm colors play off of each other and make it just a little more vibrant. So you always want to start, when you load your brush, want to start laying the paint down where you want the heaviest color to be, and then you're going to work that out from that area to blend that color softer. And I'll lighten that purple a little bit, make it a little more lavender, and soften this color down on this petal. We're going to also have some of that lavender on the opposite side on this petal. You'll see it up there on the inner surface of this right petal. I need to refresh the vivid violet color on my palette. I'm going to mix that in with this brilliant purple to make this petal on the right side a little brighter. Pick up some red. You can look at the photograph and see as you move down that petal, there's a lot of the red pinks in there. And don't hesitate to mix colors together. I've got a little bit of the purple mixed in with this red to make it a little darker. This flower is probably the most complex. It has the most petals and little waves in the petals, little ruffles. So, refer to the photograph real carefully to see where one starts and one stops. Just added some white into our mix so we can lighten that back edge a little bit. You can see as I'm working this front petal, I'm leaving just a little bit of a light edge at the top so that we can keep track of where that petal starts and stops. Again, lay your paint down where you want the color to be the heaviest and darkest, and then scrub it out to the lighter areas. I've picked up a little bit of coral on my brush. That's kind of an orangey color. And just adding some little touches in this tulip. We'll add more of this later, but adds a bit of a sunshine color to it. So in this first video, we're just trying to get the basic form of our flowers together. Just some lights and darks and a few little color variations. And we'll stop it after this video, and then the next one we'll start going in to add more layers over top of these to start refining the tulips.